Hey everybody, it's Christian Sellers here, CEO of TESS. And last week I had the great privilege of hosting about 40 of you at Norsken House to talk about the leadership strategies of the most effective Rwandan leaders. And the punchline for that lecture is captured in this slide, which compares the impacts that the most effective leaders have on the people around them compared to the least effective leaders. And you can see in this picture, there are a couple of different bars. The red, green, and blue bars describe the highest, most effective leaders, and the purple outline is the least. This is drawn from the Leadership Impact Survey, which is the gold standard measure of leadership effectiveness done by Human Synergistics. And this has been done with about 15 leaders in Rwanda over the last 6 months by TESS. And this compares the most and least effective leaders. And you can see that the biggest gaps between the purple and the colored bars comes on the blue side with the constructive leadership behaviors, the ones most associated with effectiveness, with humanistic encouraging and affiliation. That the most effective leaders are far more likely to encourage good performance from their people, to use good interpersonal skills, to build esprit de corps in their teams than the least effective leaders. On the flip side, the least effective leaders are most likely to exhibit aggressive behaviors in the Rwandan context. So they're more likely to turn the job into a competition. That's the competitive bar you can see there, and more likely to be oppositional, to increase their influence and status by finding fault with other people's work. So there's quite a lot of difference here between the two. So if you wanted to be the most effective leader, what could you learn from this if you wanted to lead in Rwanda? And that was the practical thing that we discussed together at the lecture at Norsken last week. And I started the lecture by basically giving people a set of leadership strategies that are associated with the most effective leaders. And I asked them effectively to rank them. Which ones are impactful? Which ones are effective for you? Which are important? Which would you use? And which are less important? And then I ranked those. And you can see that on the next slide. So here, if you look on the left-hand side, you can see a list of 8 items, which is based on the feedback I had. Everyone had Post-its, they stuck them up on the board, and on that basis, I was able to work out which ones people thought were the most important. Things like scheduling regular catch-ups, consulting before making decisions, sharing information. These absolutely are good strategies, and they're ones the most effective leaders use. But what was interesting was when I look at the priority list of the most effective leaders, they are doing some things slightly differently. They're focusing on the things that are hardest potentially, sitting with people who are struggling. So really coaching people who are on the bottom of the learning curve, spending time helping people learn the ropes, helping them to get things done. And in addition, giving people space where people want autonomy, they want to own the work. They're not being irritated if things aren't the way they would do them. They're not getting involved in the nitty-gritty detail. So these are the things that are different. These leaders are getting involved where they need to be, providing the on-hand coaching, but also giving people space, which emotionally is quite difficult as a leader, particularly if you have high standards and you want everything to be in a particular way. But this is something that distinguishes these leaders. What I did after this discussion that we had at Norsken is I then said to everyone, having shared these strategies that effective leaders use, which things would you like to adopt? Are there particular strategies that these leaders are using that you'd like to bring into your daily, weekly, or quarterly practice? And these were the 8 things coming up now that the leaders chose within the audience. And they said they'd like to share information, praise people who solve problems, consult before deciding. These are all things that were prioritized at the top of the list. And then in the middle, we have development discussions, explaining how things get done, and having regular one-on-ones. Now, my challenge to my audience, both in Norsken and more broadly, is that it's these things in the middle that seem to be most associated with leadership effectiveness in the leaders that I've researched. And I think the reason for that is that these are the emotional investments you make as a leader that make the biggest difference, where people feel that they're supported, they're cared for, they have someone in their corner who's really showing them how to be successful. And this is when you get teams that fly and teams that are particularly effective, and where you have peers and reports saying these leaders are the ones that are changing things and making an impact. I hope you found this useful. I certainly really enjoyed our conversation last week. I'm going to keep delving into the practical details of this work. What does it mean for your practice? What should you be doing with your time? And what I'll try and do in October is talk about one particular skill that all leaders should be doing more of. And it's a difficult one. It's having tough conversations, talking about things that are highly charged or emotional or difficult. How do you have clean, good, effective conversations on topics that are emotionally charged? We'll do that in October, but for now, thank you for everyone who contributed to this, and I hope that some of the feedback and reflections I've just shared are useful as well. Speak to you soon. Cheers.